It's time for Waking Up with Wesley. Today's forecast and weather-wide discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
All right, hello there, South Mississippi, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So we're already here, right? This is the week that brings the end of September, the start of October. You know what that means. Cruisin the Coast is in view, at least the beginning of it. And we're going to take a look at what to expect for the first weekend of Cruisin 2025. And we'll also take a look at how there might be a little pattern change here as we get closer to the weekend. So something to keep in mind if you have some plans for Cruisin the Coast. Plus, we'll talk about today's weather, which looks beautiful. I'll have more on that in a moment to explain what I mean by that. But first, let's take a look at the weekend, right? I know it's Monday, but we're already looking ahead, and it might do you some good to keep checking back with the forecast, because what we are seeing is that the setup is one that could feature better rain chances. At least that's what it looks like right now. We're going to keep checking this forecast each day, and there's probably going to be some fine-tuning, some adjustments, and hopefully those changes will be for the better. But right now, as it stands, there could be a stalled front in the northern Gulf. There could be a wave of low pressure or an area of low pressure developing along that frontal boundary, and that could lead us to some higher rain chances somewhere in the region, and that does include parts of coastal Mississippi. Now, there's some nuance to this, and there's a gradient, right? Gradient, that means change over something, in this case over distance. So there's places along the coast, if we circle those places near and south of I-10, that probably have a little bit higher rain potential than other areas that are inland to the north of Interstate 10. The reason for that gradient is because, well, most of the rain is coming from a front that's just sitting in the northern Gulf. So the closer you are to that front, the better your potential for rain. Now, there's some nuance to this, because if you get a wave of low pressure or an area of low pressure to develop along that front, that's going to shift where the heaviest rain takes place. Let's rewind this and just pause it right about here and note the position of the low pressure by Sunday afternoon. This time around, the computer model shows that it could be positioned basically to the southeast of the Mississippi coast. That would be about 100, 200 miles to the southeast of the Mississippi coast. With the Mississippi coast being on the western side of that low, that could mean that we could be on the drier side of things. Usually when you have a low pressure in the Gulf or the northern Gulf, you tend to have that counterclockwise wind circulation. I can draw a little bit better than that. Let's try again. Counterclockwise wind circulation. And with the winds rotating or circulating counterclockwise around that low, this means that the winds are coming up from the Gulf ahead of the low or to the eastern side of the low. And as you can see, that's why all of that rain is showing up on the map in places like Florida, in places like Georgia. But on the other hand, you have this kind of drier wind coming in from the north on this side of the circulation. And that is kind of where maybe our Mississippi coast might find itself. But there's so much nuance to that, right? And I don't think the computer model is going to nail it on the head with the exact location of this low pressure 5 days in the future. So that's why you got to keep 5-6 days in the future. So that's why you got to keep checking back on the forecast as we find or sort of identify the trends and see what is more likely, what's the most likely location for that front, as well as for the low that might develop along the front. So putting it all together for you, this week brings many dry days, but we just want to give you that first alert that by the weekend, it might not be quite as dry, depending on exactly where that stalled front will be located, depending on exactly where, if we see a wave of low pressure, where that will be located. Those two things will determine exactly where the best potential for rain will be. And there's a possibility that most of the rain might just stay offshore. we can take a look at what the latest models are showing right now. So we're looking at raw computer model information. And this is the GFS, which, by the way, if you watched Good Morning Mississippi around 4:30 this morning, around 5 this morning, we were dealing with a previous run of this model, which had all of this rain a little bit more to the north and west. But now that we've got a new run of this model, the rain is pushing more to the east because it is developing like we just showed you. The model assumes the low pressure is here, so you're getting most of this rain push on the eastern side of the low. You're getting some of the dry push back here on the northern and western side of the low. Again, if the placement of this low changes when we get another run of this model later today, it could change, and maybe the low is a little bit farther off to the west, which would then put Mississippi closer to the rain, and all of that rain would move. Now, but again, at least the bottom line here is that you look at the land areas of Mississippi, you don't really see any rain. So, like I said, there's a possibility that all of this stuff just takes place over the water, and maybe cruising will be just fine. But for now, it's a little too close to call, and it's probably too close for comfort, with that large area of heavy rain less than 100 miles, fewer than 100 miles away from the Mississippi coast. Now, we got a different computer model. It's not just about the GFS computer model. You can take a look at the European computer model, and there's not a lot of difference there between the two model scenarios. The European also shows the same general trend. The heaviest rain is offshore, which is good for Mississippi, since that would keep us from getting a washout for cruising. But it's too close, right? It's too close to really feel that confident that it's going to completely miss us. This model is even fewer than 100 miles away from our coast with that heavy rain. And we can take a more zoomed in look, plus we'll turn off any of the rain that happens over water to help give a more clear picture. And this is the GFS model showing, rain amounts that don't even hit an inch in South Mississippi. We can switch it to the European model, and it also shows light amounts, if any at all, maybe less than a half inch. We can take one more zoom in for you. This is right down to our 6 southernmost counties. GFS model, again, if you checked it before 5 o'clock this morning, it was much wetter, but now the trend has shoved more of the rain offshore, so hopefully it stays that way. But switch it over to the European model, and you're looking at around 1/4 of an inch, 1/10 to 1/4 inch of rain. But that gradient is still present, right? You see the lower numbers inland and the relatively higher numbers down closer to the coast. And if you were to go offshore, the numbers would be even higher. So that's, like I said, something that we will spend many days this week monitoring and making adjustments to the forecast as we see fit. So be sure to stay tuned. I just wanted to give you that first alert for that. If you have some Cruisin the Coast plans, I don't want you to be caught off guard expecting the dryness that we have this week to completely continue into the weekend. You would be surprised because the rain chance does at least slightly tick up into the weekend based on the current information. So you remember earlier in this video when I said it was a beautiful day? Well, it's a play on words. It's beautiful. And you're going to go for a cup or two of the brew, right? I mean, it is National Coffee Day. And I love this day. I drink coffee every morning. When you wake up as early as I do, you pretty much need coffee injected into your veins or something like that. I don't know. I love the morning rush of caffeine. And if you are a fan of coffee too, it looks like a perfect morning to enjoy a brew. It's a pleasant morning with temperatures in the 60s and 70s. We're expecting temperatures going into the upper 80s and lower 90s this afternoon, so maybe you'll go for a cold brew if you're having coffee later today. This morning though, maybe either one, a hot cup of joe or a cup of iced coffee, either. Probably looking pretty nice as we go into the day. And by the way, the chance for rain, 0%. So we're starting off the week on the dry side, plenty of sun. It's a nice day. If you were a fan of what we had over the weekend, this is basically a continuation of that. Again, there is some nuance temperature-wise. If you're in Bay St. Louis, Ocean Springs, Goshen, maybe your temperature might only get up to like 88, 89, or 90. But if you're in a place that is a little farther away from the coastal waters, Wiggins, Lucedale, Picayune, Van Cleve, Saucier, the Kiln, maybe you might come up to a temperature around 91, 92, 93, a little bit hotter when you're not near those coastal waters. All of these numbers, by the way, whether it's upper 80s, whether it's lower 90s, all of these numbers are a little above our usual late September temperatures. Usually in late September, we get closer to the middle 80s for highs. So a little above normal temperature-wise for now, but maybe by the time we get to the weekend, temperatures might come a little bit closer to normal. It's not that we're getting a cool front or anything like that, but we just get this kind of breezy east wind as there's low pressure trying to form offshore in the Gulf near that front. And again, I can show you what that looks like here on the Futurecast map as we get closer to the weekend. You have a low pressure like that. Remember, the wind circulates counterclockwise around a low, and so that's how we get, look at which way the wind arrows are pointed, right? They are pointed from east to west, and that's how we get that little breeze from the east by the time we go to the late week and this weekend. So that little breeze from the east might help to keep our temperatures down a little bit, and we'll get into the middle 80s each afternoon. The mornings don't really move much. You know, this morning we had around 70. Most of these mornings will either be around 70, maybe into the mid and upper 60s. So not much movement temperature-wise for your mornings, but maybe some movement temperature-wise for your afternoons. Because even though we're close to 90 the next few days, maybe we get down into the middle 80s later this week with that kind of refreshing breeze from the east as we head into the upcoming weekend. And like I said, with cruising starting, if you have Cruisin the Coast plans, be sure to stay tuned as we monitor the latest in the forecast. That's what it looks like for the next 7 days. If we take a look at the next 10 days, which puts us deeper into next week, we can take just a peek at that. And as you can see, dry and nice for now, but then as we go to next week, it's going to start off kind of breezy with those breezy winds continuing into next Monday, October 6th. And then maybe we lose hold of some of those breezy winds, and maybe the temperatures kind of come up a little bit more, perhaps going back into the upper 80s, close to 90 for next Tuesday, October 7th, and next Wednesday, October 8th. Of course, once you go beyond 7 days in the future, you can get some wiggling in the forecast. The forecast might fluctuate when you check it each day. So those days certainly not set in stone, but just wanted to give you an early preview if you are a lover of Cruisin the Coast, what to expect as we head into the weekend and beyond. Well, that'll pretty much do it for this Monday edition of Waking Up with Wesley. Again, a happy National Coffee Day to you, and we'll catch you again next time. Until then, take care, and we'll see you again.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.